so as we shall do that. It feels refreshing to the soul to catch a flight to another country. It feels equally soul-satisfying to travel on a fast-moving expressway and set up a business cross borders. Well, in case you're looking for some guidance on that, you're at the right place because we're about to talk about the challenges and opportunities of cross-border entrepreneurship. And first up on this panel, I would like to introduce Mr. John Cabeca, United States Intellectual Property Counsellor, Southeast Asia. Working through the American Embassy in New Delhi, India, he is the US Intellectual Property Counsellor for South Asia and serves as the principal officer within the US embassies and consulates throughout South Asia on policy matters related to intellectual property protection and the enforcement of IP rights. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a loud round of applause for Mr. John Cabeca, United States Intellectual Property Counsellor, Southeast Asia. Next up, it is my pleasure to invite on the dais Patrick Hebert, Consul General. Now, the years 2010 to 2011 were all about his role as the Deputy Director of the Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Response Group, when this group was coordinating Canada's responses to the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 and Japan in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a loud round of applause for Mr. Patrick Hebert, Consulate General of Canada in Chandigarh. And of course, tying the panel together is Principal Partner at Talwar Associates, TT Consultants and Xlscout, Mr. Jitin Talwar. All things legal and technology are his forte. He's a legal tech entrepreneur, also an angel investor, and also a Chevening Fellow at Oxford University. And with that, I leave it up to our moderator to take this forward.
Hello. Yeah. So thanks, Niharika. Thanks. Are we waiting for folks to settle down? Okay. So welcome, gentlemen. So as they say, इस जहाँ के आगे जहाँ और भी हैं, अभी इसके इम्तिहान और भी हैं. So when you are traveling cross-border, it's always, as they say, it's easier to earn a single dollar than it is to earn a rupee. I've personally seen that. And who better to talk about this with somebody who represents the US dollar and the Canadian dollar, right? So I'd like to first invite Mr. Patrick Hebert, His Excellency, to say a few words. The way we'll work is, about 7 to 8 minutes of a keynote from your side, then 7 to 8 minutes from Mr. John, and then we'll open it up for some questions from my side and from the audience. Is that fair? Sure. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitin, for the kind introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. It feels really good to be back at TIECON this year and to be united with my colleague and friend, John, from the US Embassy. I remember that we had a great time on our panel with John at TIECON last year. Our moderator at that time was Komal, so it's good to see that there's some family traditions that are being kept for this year with Jitin. So seriously, it is an honor to be part of TIECON 2023 with such an impressive audience of entrepreneurs, mentors, innovators, investors, startups. I've seen also some journalists, policymakers, and I know many friends of Canada in the room. The theme of TIECON Chandigarh this year is Innovate, Impact, and Invest. And frankly, when I was looking at this title, I thought this could have been the title for a conference on Canada-India economic partnership. Indeed, these three words, innovate, impact, invest, really summarize how Canadian and Indian businesses are building partnerships today. partnerships that have brought successes for all. So it's no wonder that the rapidly expanding Canada-India commercial relationship today exceeds $100 billion. And we have over $70 billion of portfolio investment from Canada's biggest pension funds and institutional investors. This Canadian capital is helping to build a new India, from roads to airports to renewable energy. And I had the pleasure earlier this week to witness a concrete example of this investment when I flew from Bengaluru to Chandigarh. Indeed, I flew from Terminal 2, which was inaugurated by Prime Minister Modi last November, Terminal 2 that has been built with significant Canadian investment. And today, India and Canada are among the top 10 trading partners for each others. Our bilateral two-way trade in goods and services has bounced back from the COVID-19 pandemic, and in 2022 we reached a record-breaking $21 billion. And of course we also have several $billion in FDI, with more than 100 Indian companies invested in Canada and about 400 Canadian companies invested here in India. I think that this has been possible partly because India has made enormous progress in becoming more business-friendly in the last decade. And our companies in Canada are seeing some exciting opportunities for growth here in India. I also believe that Canada is the ideal partner for India because our economies are so complementary. This natural fit is why our governments are now working hard to conclude a win-win early progress trade agreement, which will be followed by a comprehensive economic partnership agreement, which is a fancy way to say a free trade agreement. But it is also a key reason why India has been recognized as a critical partner for Canada in our recently announced Indo-Pacific strategy. And this strategy includes over $240 million to expand trade and investment in the region. It also provides for supports for improved Team Canada trade missions for priority sectors like infrastructure and energy. And while all of this is true for most parts of India, I believe personally that there is tremendous potential to grow the trade relations between Canada and North India. I see a lot of potential, for example, in agriculture and agri-tech, clean tech, and of course the digital industries. So we work very closely with local trade associations such as TIE, but also our friends at CII and NASCOM to support greater business and trade relations between Canada and North India. And I'd like to give one recent example that is very close to the region. Saskatchewan-based company Clean Seed recently announced that it had entered into a letter of intent with the Northern Farmers Association and Mahindra to market and distribute 1,000 Smart Seeder Minimax machines from 2023 to 2025 in Punjab and Haryana. And last month, the Premier in Canada is like a chief minister here, so the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, was in Chandigarh, and we had the pleasure of visiting a farm where we could witness a live demonstration of this Canadian technology. And I have to say, that was really impressive. And beyond the great photo op of me sitting with the Premier on a Canadian tractor in a farm in Haryana, it was great to see so much enthusiasm from the farmers. And clearly, to me, that was a win-win deal for both sides. But there are many other examples. And indeed, in the past in the last 15 or 16 months since I arrived in Chandigarh, I have been impressed by the passion and the drive for success displayed by the startup community here, and especially all the TIE members. Now, I think most of you would agree, but let me remind you that Canada has been and is a great investment destination for Indian companies. And in fact, we have many companies here today, including on stage, who can confirm this from their own experience. But if you speak to them, I believe that they will tell you that in Canada, the reason that they could be successful is because We provide reliable government policies. We have a highly educated and well-trained workforce. We have a strong innovation ecosystem with government supports, and, as many of you will know, an open and welcoming immigration system. So that makes Canada an excellent place to start, but also to scale up your business. And as we all know, and we heard several times today, and I heard that since I got here, skilled employees are fundamental for any business to succeed. And from your base in Canada, you can tap into the Immigration Canada Global Skills Strategy, which make it easier for your companies to attract talent and bring top international talent to work for your company quickly. But in addition, in Canada, we have our own wealth of talent when it comes to hiring skilled workers. Indeed, over 50% of Canadians are post-secondary graduates, which makes Canada the most educated population in the world. Now, locating your business in Canada will also open the doors for other markets for your company. Indeed, business based in Canada enjoy unparalleled access to export markets thanks to our global network of trade agreements. These markets cover more than 50 countries, including our neighbor to the south, the United States, and this accounts for more than 60% of the world GDP. And of course, if you need another reason to look to Canada to establish your business, we are consistently ranked as the best place in the world for quality of life. So, Jitin, you wanted me to speak for 7 or 8 minutes. I'll try to conclude now, but just to say, I started my remarks by talking about how the bilateral trade relations between Canada and India was a great story. But personally, I believe that we can do much more. And the question is, how can we do that? And part of the answer is Canada's Trade Commissioner Service, what we call the TCS. This is our trade and investment promotion service, which has a presence in over 160 offices globally, and this is well positioned to help companies make businesses with their Canadian counterparts. Here in India, the Trade Commissioner Service is the third largest trade promotion program for Canada in the world. We have 8 offices across the country, including here in Chandigarh, but also in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, Hyderabad, and Chennai. And they are here to help you and provide any support or assistance you may need to do business with Canada or in Canada. Of course, my office here in Chandigarh is smaller than what I would like, but I can count on the support of over 50 trade commissioners across the country to help you connect with companies in Canada. And in addition to the federal government Trade Commissioner Service, our footprint in India is augmented by the presence of 6 Canadian provinces. So we have, I see British Columbia, I see Ontario, we also have Quebec, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and New Brunswick with offices across the country. So today I have colleagues from the federal government, our investment officer, but also a colleague from British Columbia who is based in Chandigarh, and a colleague from the province of Ontario who came from our Delhi office to participate in TIE this weekend. So I will close by saying that I do see a lot of opportunities for Indian companies that are interested in investing in Canada. We have incentive programs at all levels, the federal level, the provincial level, but also at the municipal level, and we'd be happy to talk to you about those programs. So I'll stop here, but I really look forward to continuing our discussion with you. We started from my arrival about a year ago. It's been great, and I look forward to continue our discussion and hear about your successes in my country, in Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hebert. Thank you. Thank you for finishing on time. Thank you. With that, I'll come to Mr. John Cabeca. If you could present your views, and then we'll open it out for questions. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here again up on the dais with you, Patrick, and as always, Jitin, wonderful to partner with you on programs in TIE Chandigarh and other programs in the past. This is my second TIE Chandigarh as well, and I was I was sharing earlier that throughout this week, and I'll get to it because World IP Day was on Wednesday, I've been in several major cities throughout India this week, going from place to place promoting World Intellectual Property Day. But I have to say that I was just so excited to come back to Chandigarh for TIECON, and I find it an extremely rewarding and informative experience, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But first, from a macroeconomic scale, I think it's worth noting that the ties between the United States and India are extremely strong. India is the U.S.'s largest trading partner, and the U.S. is India's 9th largest trading partner. Or did I say that backwards? But I think you. But so we have very strong economic ties. But I think it's worth noting that when I boil it down to my role and my role in intellectual property, I want to share that from our gross domestic product in the United States, we did a study on IP-intensive industries that contribute to our nation's economy. And it turns out we look at an IP-intensive industry as an industry that reinvests a portion of its revenue back into creating more innovation. And we found, and more intellectual property, and we found that our GDP accounts for about 40% of our GDP is attributed to these IP-intensive industries. So we take our intellectual property very seriously, and it's one of the reasons why I love coming to Chandigarh, because I feel the strong startup spirit, and also from that, the IP that is generated from many of you in this room. So I'm excited again to be here. I thought I would take a minute to talk about my role as the IP counselor here in India and serving South Asia. There are basically 3 pillars to the work that I do. The first is government-to-government work that we do throughout India and throughout the respective ministries across South Asia on helping to support the government's efforts to improve and strengthen its intellectual property system and the enforcement of intellectual property rights in the region. So we work very closely not just with the Intellectual Property Office and policymakers, but also with regulators, and we monitor developments across relevant ministries to see if there are any equities that relate to intellectual property as new laws and new guidelines are being developed. So we do a bulk of our work there. The second pillar is the work that we do on behalf of companies seeking to enter the Indian market and helping them understand the differences between the intellectual property systems in the United States and here in South Asia, how the courts work and the differences between our court systems, and where we see a need to address issues with the government based on trends that we hear from stakeholders, then we advocate on behalf of companies here on the ground in trying to make the system more accessible and more predictable and reliable. So we advocate on the behalf of industry in that regard. And then the third pillar is one of outreach and education, where we work across the innovation ecosystem at all levels throughout the region on all types of intellectual property to help raise awareness of intellectual property, the understanding of IP, and also importantly, the respect for intellectual property. And so thanks to those of you that attended the masterclass earlier today. I was really pleased with the engaging questions, both during the program and afterwards. So thanks to those of you that attended to hear about IP strategies. But I thought I would take a moment to call out, I mentioned earlier, World Intellectual Property Day. So it takes place on April 26th every year. And you heard this morning from Madam Chitkara that she mentioned it was World IP Day, and this year's theme is Women in Intellectual Property, Accelerating Innovation and Creativity. And with such an amazing theme, we usually call it World IP Day, but since I have regional responsibilities, I usually call it World IP Day Month. But this year, I'm calling it World IP Day Year. And I'm pleased to report that I've done a series of programs just last month here in Chandigarh in supporting women in innovation, one program in partnership with TIE Chandigarh. Also just came back from Kolkata, Bengaluru on programs earlier this week to support women entrepreneurs there, and just a couple weeks ago in Guwahati and Imphal. and not to mention on World IP Day itself in Delhi. The whole point of raising awareness in the spirit of intellectual property is to help serve as a catalyst for more innovative activity, more entrepreneurial activity in the creative arts, and to help guide efforts along their path. So with that, I want to take a moment to share, prior to coming to India, I was the regional director for the Silicon Valley USPTO, and as a result of that, I worked extensively with startups and got to see many startups from their first exhibition excel and grow to the point where now they're winning international design competitions, outpacing multinational corporations. So to see a startup grow in that way, and to also be there as startups pivot and take new directions, has been a very important and rewarding part of my career, and one that I love and look forward to continuing my partnership with TIE Chandigarh in supporting the startup and entrepreneurial activity here in any way that we can to help you in your path to success as a startup and to a successful business. So with that, I'll pause, look forward to our Q&A, and thank you all very much, and happy World IP Day.
Thanks, John. Thanks. We value the association with both Canada and the US a lot from TIE Chandigarh. I guess this region has very, very close ties, both in terms of business and in terms of entrepreneurship, innovation, social, cultural. We're very close, and as far as both these countries are concerned. So my first question would be, in the flavor of the season, both in terms of IP, this, 26th of April is World IP Day. This is World IP Month in any case, right? So my first question is like a combination of flavor of the season, large language models, and intellectual property. So what's going on there, John? Can we just go ahead and use large language models, which are everywhere these days, Hugging Face, GPT, BARD. What are the implications of using and leveraging large language models from an IP standpoint? Can a startup doing a cross-border contract just start using a large language model and it's okay? We'd like to know. And please say yes, if possible.
Thanks, Jitin. I would say ask the chat, the chatbot. I did that recently. I went into a large language model and asked it who owns the content that it generates, and the content, the platform owner. I mean, the response back from the chat was that they do. So even though you might be interrogating questions, according to I used ChatGPT recently, they came back and said they own the content, and so if you plan to use anything generated by the chat engine, you need to get, for commercial purposes, you need to get permissions. That's not unlike any other sort of creative content that you see, whether it be online or in physical form, where there are the copyright protections exist, and that if you are going to use anyone's copyright, then you need to seek their permission. But I'll say, with respect to that, I think it's a good way to say these AI systems are challenging intellectual property in new ways. And as a result of this, and even whether you're using a text-based large language model or a graphic-based one, they're creating new challenges as to who is the author, who is the creator, and even in graphics, we're seeing some interesting areas where you might be able to go into the graphics engine and say, make me a picture of this flower, but in the form of Andy Warhol or of Picasso, and those two artists still have copyright protection for their work. So taking something in their likeness might be implicating the copyright protections that still exist in those creative works as well. Whereas if you say, well, we'll make the flower in the likeness of a Van Gogh, well, Van Gogh has been dead more than a century, so the copyrights are open and free for use then. So these are some of the things that we're looking at, and even at the USPTO, and just last month, the U.S. Copyright Office announced an initiative that it's also looking into its existing copyright laws, trying to see where AI is challenging the existing laws and trying to see where those laws need to pivot or be amended or further addressed. I think just from my own personal perspective, finding an international solution for dealing with AI and in this space is going to be the most important, because everyone's generating AI, and we know intellectual property is global. So in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. You know, from the monkey owning the copyright, which is a very famous case, to the AI owning the copyright. We are living in interesting times. I'd like to come back to you, to Mr. Hebert, Consulate General. Now, we know, you know, from personal experience, Canada is a great place for AI research. Okay, a lot of the large language models that we are talking about, where the copyright ownership is being talked about, perhaps are being built in Mississauga, Waterloo, that AI connection. So the question that came in from one of the audience was, how do you help companies in site selection? For example, there's a company in AI which is very promising, belongs to one of the people on the stage, wants to set up in Canada. Where do you set up, right? You go, what number do you dial? And then any specific province or city which you think offers a better ecosystem, say around AI, manufacturing, data analytics, what is the most exciting, site selection? How do you work on that?
Well, thank you. It's interesting that you're raising this question, because somebody at breakfast this morning was suggesting that the ecosystem in Canada was a bit complicated to navigate because of the provinces and all this. I wouldn't say it's complicated. It's complex, but it's an opportunity for all of you, because what happens is we do have at the federal level, at the provincial level, and as I said, even at the municipal level, we have government-funded organizations that are there to attract investment. And we have people in the country, here in India, as part of our Trade Commissioner services, but also from our provinces, who are here to help you make that decision. So it depends what you want. I meet a lot of people, and they say, when they first talk about Canada, they think about usually Toronto or Vancouver, because this is where they have family, this is where they have, they've heard about companies from Punjab or Haryana that have been successful in those two cities. And when we start talking to them, depending on what they want, we can provide advice. Not everybody has to be in Toronto, but it might make sense for you to be in Toronto. Not everybody has to be in Vancouver. We see now more and more companies going to British Columbia. Outside of Vancouver, we have provinces, I mentioned Saskatchewan, they've been very successful at attracting more talent. So it really depends what the company is looking for. If being close to your clients is important, that you'll make a different decision. But cost of living, access to education, all these things will be different from one province to another and from one city to another. And this is where our colleagues, the Trade Commissioner of Service, can help you. We will help you ask the right questions so you can determine where to go. But we will also do from time to time site visits. So we have taken a lot of companies from this region to Canada across the country so they could meet our partners and see what would make sense for them. That being said, just to conclude maybe on your question about ICT or AI, we do have very specific clusters in those areas, including in all the big cities. So Toronto, of course, but Vancouver, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary, even Ottawa. So all those big cities have something to offer. It really depends on what you want to achieve and which niche you're looking at.
Okay. Any questions? We have space for one question from the audience. If there's none, then I'll go ahead and ask one more question to John, probably. Any questions so far? Any questions? One question. Okay, so my question to you is, for example, a startup wants to service a client in the US. So the question is, how does the startup protect innovations in the US, whether there's copyrights, trademark, patents? How do you protect them? Where do you start?
So thank you. I would say generally you know, our laws between India and the US are quite similar. There are some important distinctions, but understanding what those distinctions are really important. So it also depends on what the type of innovation is that's being, you know, that's seeking to enter the U.S. market, whether it's just a brand, whether you're going to protect it with patent, whether copyrights, trade secrets, or a combination of all of these things, as I gave an example in the session earlier today. So I think the important distinctions, I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just highlight the disclosure requirements are different. So, you know, you may have had disclosed your invention here in India prior to protecting it by a patent. If it's within 1 year, you can still get patent protection or seek patent protection in the U.S. Because we have a 1-year grace period. So that might be one way that can help a startup that may have, you know, inadvertently disclosed their invention here prior to filing. Also, trade secrets, you know, our trade secret laws in the U.S. are quite robust. Some of them come as common law rights. Some of them strengthen employee agreements. And understanding if you're making those types of agreements with U.S. companies, understanding the trade secret landscape would be really important. Again, hopefully we're working with India, hopefully to see some sort of similar legislation on trade secret here. And the last one would be foreign filing licenses. If you have an inventor, whether they're here in India or in the U.S. as an Indian citizen, and they're going to be named on a U.S. patent, you have to seek permission from the Indian government, from the IP office.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
So, yeah,
I have
sorry.
one last 20-second question. Do you help Indian companies connect with incubators, accelerators in Canada? And this is just 20-second question, so we should be done.
20 seconds, yes, we do. And I think the best way to do that is talk to my colleagues who are here. We have a number of incubators, superclusters, as I said, and that's part of what we do. We help connect the people here in India and in Punjab and North India with the incubators in Canada. We'd be happy to help you with making those connections.
Yeah, I think I can speak from personal knowledge that and personal experience that whether it's CDL or Fastland, Vector Institute or MyTax, I think it's super helpful to the extent that sometimes if you've got a good research project, sometimes if you spend $1 there, they give you back $1.50 to also market that business. So it's great.
I always think that you could be sitting in the Canada chair to talk about our ecosystem. You know it very well. Thanks so much. I think my present job pays me better. So, but thank you so much, Mr. Patrick Hebert and John. It's a pleasure, as always, to host you, to hear from you, and to talk about both IP as well as Canada, business in Canada. Thank you so much. Thanks for gracing the occasion. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you.
जब ये म्यूजिक बजता है ना मेरी एंट्री पे मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लगता है मुझे ऐसा लगता है जैसे मेरे लिए ही बज रहा है but anyways well you know I've been ranting all morning in Hindi, that's our language, and I've been picking up couplets from here and there. So especially for Mr. John and Mr. Patrick, if I don't do that right now, I said that I've been ranting all morning in Hindi. If I don't recite a couplet right now, I'll feel a little incomplete. So I'll go ahead and do just that and translate it for you as well. It goes something like this. सैर कर दुनिया की गालिब, जिंदगानी फिर कहाँ? जिंदगानी अगर रही भी तो नौजवानी फिर कहाँ? Well, what this means is, travel the world, my friend. Life only comes around once. And if it does come around, the golden years will not. So travel while you can. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. John Cabeca, United States Intellectual Property Counsellor, Southeast Asia, Mr. Patrick Hebert, Consul General, Consulate General of Canada in Chandigarh, and our moderator, Mr. Jitin Talwar, founder, Xlscout and TT Consultants. May I request the Vice President of TIE Chandigarh to come up and felicitate the panel.